Neville Goddard, 1963 lectures from The Awakening. February 26, 1963, His Name. Tonight's subject is His Name. I think you know how I feel about the Bible. That the Bible is not the product of human, blank space. It is not constructed by man. It's the history of man's discovery by God's revelation of the changing name of God. And it increases in its value to man. Wow. In the 4th chapter of Genesis, the very last verse, we are told that a child was born whose name was Enosh, born of Seth. And many began to call upon the name of the Lord. That's the first time that man began to call upon the name of the Lord. The word Enosh means mortal man, something that is fragile, something that simply wears out and is buried. Mortal man began to ask concerning origins, why am I here? What is the cause of the phenomena of life? So man began to ask concerning origins. The next time we see it, it's in the 32nd chapter of the book of Genesis. Very interesting, Enosh born of Seth, right? The next time we see it, it's the 32nd chapter of the book of Genesis. And this is the night, so we are told, a man called Jacob, the supplanter, wrestled with God. When it came to the breaking of the day, God said to him, "Let me depart." And he said, "I will not let you depart unless you bless me." And God blessed him. Then he said to God, "What is your name?" And God answered, "Why do you ask my name?" He would not tell him, but he called the spot where God touched him Peniel, which means the face of God. For said he, "I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved." Then as the sun rose, Jacob halted because where God had touched, it shrank. It shrank upon his thigh. It was a sinew upon his thigh. Genesis 32:24. But we're all adults. That's what man at that level of consciousness believed to be the creative power of the universe. For today, 1963, you and I are witness to the most fantastic things that man has conceived. Missiles in space that can reach the sun, these IBM machines, electronic brains, but nothing that man has ever devised or brought to birth can compare to a child. I do like where this is going. Nothing in this world that man could ever conceive is comparable to the brain of a child. For the child conceived the instrument that now frightens him. We have a bomb, a nuclear bomb, but that can't compare to the brain that conceived it, no matter what we do with it. So a little child, this living organism, was what man thought, and he goes back to the origin, and you realize the sex act, and he thought that could be God. Well, you read the 32nd chapter of the book of Genesis, where man once thought that that was God, the very act of producing the most sensitive, creative thing in the world in the form of a child. And all over the world, we find these phallic images. All over the world, you can see them. There isn't a part of the world that someone hasn't erected some phallic image in his worship of God. Now we turn to the second book of the Bible, the book of Exodus, where the name changes because it wasn't yet revealed. Men began to call upon the name of the Lord. They did not know what to call upon. And many thought it was sex. And then comes the 3rd chapter of the book of Exodus, and you read through, say, the 15th, and now God reveals himself to his chosen vessel, Moses. And Moses said to the Lord, "When I come to the people of Israel, and I say to them that the Lord your God has sent me unto you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say?" And the Lord answered, "I am who I am. In other words, every form of the verb to be. I am that I am. I will be what I will be. Say unto them, I am has sent me unto you. And so when you come to the people of Israel and you say to them, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me unto you, and this is my name forever. I am. No other name. My name forever. And this will lead you out of the wilderness into the promised land. There it is in plain words, maybe 2 sentences. You must hear what he just said and accept it. Persuade yourself of this very truth. This is my name forever. I am. No other name. My name forever. And this will lead you out of the wilderness into the promised land. So that was the second grand revelation of the name of God. Man thought it was simply the creative act. Who can deny that nothing in this world man has ever created compares to that of a child? Nothing. And he has to trace it back to his origin of the act. All of a sudden comes out of this fantastic part of him. And then comes the revelation of another kind, that the name is I am. Then comes the final revelation, which we find in the New Testament. He brings something entirely different that man has not quite seen before, and he reveals the name now as Father. Holy Father, keep them in thy name, which thou hast given unto me, that they may be one, as you and I are one. John 17:11. So he gave him the name that was his name, and the name was Father. The final revelation of God to man concerning who he really is, he's Father. So in many and various ways, God spoke of old to our fathers by the prophets, but in these last days, he has spoken to us by a Son. Hebrews 1:1. If he's spoken by a Son, then he's the Father. If he is spoken by a Son, then he's the Father. And so God speaks in his final day to man through a Son. His Son. And the Son reveals to that man that he is the Father of that Son. And then and only then does man know who he really is. But until that day comes, take the second revelation of the name of God, which is I am. And use it wisely. You can use it for anything in the world. You are told, if you blaspheme against this name, you must be stoned to death, as told us in the 24th chapter of the book of Leviticus. Stone him to death. If you want to hear it, the 24th of Leviticus, the 16th verse, anyone who blasphemes against the name. The name has already been revealed because Leviticus is the 3rd book. The 2nd book, Exodus, has revealed the name. Now, if you blaspheme against this name, stone him to death. But everyone must do it. One who was born of a Hebrew woman who knew an Egyptian man, and he cursed the name of God, and they listened to see what God should say to do to such a man, to stone him to death. Well, a stone does not mean you take stones and throw at him, as people will do, but the stones are the literal facts of life. In the Seth material, that was called by Seth the rational approach. Facts of life equal the rational approach to life. Looking at everything and what's perfect and measures and the width and height and all this other stuff is rational, versus what Seth described as the magical approach. We're going to get into that differently in a different video, but I just want to bring it up because it's very fascinating that the facts of life is all that science can come up with as an answer to the magic of life, to the creative act of life. Come up with these facts. Stoned to death means be overwhelmed by more facts. This whole creative idea of bringing a son into the world, and man can only go back to the sex act and say that that's the reason. And from what I am picking up, that is not the reason that a child is come. That's the facts, not the creation. A stone does not mean you take stones and throw at them, as people will do, but the stones are the literal facts of life. How would I blaspheme against the name of God? With God, all things are possible. There's nothing impossible to God. And his name is I am. And I dare to say I am unwanted. I dare to say I am unwanted. I am poor. I am ill. I am completely ignored in this world. All of this is blasphemy against God, to whom all things are possible. For it's not seeing what I want for myself or for anyone in this world that I love. So here I am blaspheming against God. You're taking God's name in vain when you blaspheme against God means I am poor. I am ill. I am lonely. That's taking God's name, I am, and putting it in vain. Poor, ill, lonely, stupid, alone, unwanted, not famous. That's the meaning of the Lord's name in vain. The Lord's name, God's name, I am, and any negative statement that follows that. You can't afford to repeat any negative after you use the phrase I am. Don't do it. Change right now. Flip the tape. Flip the script. I am wealthy. I am healthy. I am happily in love, married with a family. I am wise. You just feel better already. Just saying it one time. Give life to Jacob. Breathe life into this child. It's a child that you're breathing life in when you say, I am in love. That's the child being in love. You're the one giving it life. You. I am healthy. Health is the child. That's you giving life to that child. I am wealthy. You're killing the idea of not being wealthy. Don't even want to say I am that. That's not even worth repeating. I did it already once. You're giving life to the child of wealth within you in your womb. You need a child to come into the world to show you this drama over and over and then take the responsibility. Of course, it isn't like we shouldn't take on the responsibility because obviously we all have been part of a family. At least we've been born of a woman. We know that much. Remember, two births, one from below, one from above. Art imitating life or life imitating art? I don't know. Now, I am told in the 8th chapter of the book of John, except you believe that I am he, you die in your sins. Verse 24, sin is missing the mark. So if I don't believe that I am the man I want to be, I remain where I am at the moment of not daring to assume that I am the man that I want to be and remain in that limitation. So I die missing the mark. I die in my sins and do the being, and so the being that you really are, if the second revelation is true, and I can tell you it is true, that his name is I am. And so the being that you really are, if the second revelation is true, and I can tell you it's true, that his name is I am. It doesn't mean you worship something on the outside when you say, I am. And the day that you actually contact it as though the I thou concept within yourself and feel who you really are, but really feel it. Now, here's a true story that I heard this past Saturday. I go occasionally when I'm invited, but I'm not a member of the turf club. I go when someone takes me. So last Saturday, my wife and I were taken to the turf club. I was introduced to this man who sat just one little row below. Actually, nice chap. He could play the part of Lon Chaney. Strange, weird little fellow. And then they told me his story. He came here penniless from Kentucky. Not a nickel. How he got the money necessary to buy a small plot of land, I do not know. That was not told me. But he bought a small plot of land in Ventura County. He wanted to have oil, so he would sleep on the land itself. He didn't build some little shack. He slept right on the ground. And with his head to the actual ground, he would hear oil coming in. He would smell oil. You know what he's doing, right? Falling asleep, state akin to sleep, hearing the oil, smelling the oil. Come close, my son, so I can feel you. He would come home sometimes in the morning at 6 a.m. and his wife was distraught. What happened to you? He was sleeping on the land, bringing it in. Today, the man, I would say he's 10 years my senior, about 68, pushing 70, has no financial problems. He has given away fortunes. He's worth over $6 million, so he told me himself. But now he has another problem, and he's forgotten the name of God. His present problem is boredom. He goes to the track 5 days a week, Tuesday through Saturday. If he drops $10,000, it's no problem. If he drops $20,000, that's no problem. He can drop what he wants, but he's bored and he's not physically well, and he doesn't remember how he brought all this into being by the name of God. When he put his head on that earth and began to listen, who was listening? If you said, hey, what are you doing? I am smelling the oil. That's what he would say. I am smelling the oil. You would have called the name of God, I am smelling oil. I am hearing oil. That's what he would say. He brought it all in, brought his 6 million. He's given away a fortune because it comes in so rapidly. He gives it away, still leaving himself millions. But he doesn't remember the name of God. Now he's saying, I am unwell. He's blaspheming the name of God. So you are told the man who blasphemes the name of God, stone him to death. The stone is to show him the facts of life and to show him the facts of life. To stone is to show him the facts of life and so show him the facts of life. You aren't feeling well, are you? No. And you see the world with all the things with it? And these are the stones, and you tell him. But he has forgotten, and those around him don't know. He once used the name of God wisely and brought wealth into this world. He can bring anything into this world if he would use the name of God. You can bring anything into this world if you use the name of God. That name, I am. It is my name forever, said God in the 3rd chapter of the book of Exodus, my name forever. But I will reveal a still greater name as man begins to wake, as man begins to awake, and the final name is Father. And I will reveal a greater name as man begins to awake, and the final name is Father. And so show us the Father, and we'll be satisfied. I have been so long with you, and yet you do not know me. Philip, he who has seen me has seen the Father. How then can you say, show us the Father? John 14:8. And so here I tell you, I am the Father, and no one knows he is the Father. So, Holy Father, keep them in thy name, which thou hast given me, and they may be one, even as we are one. There's no way in this world that you and I will know we are one, save through this last act of God's revealing himself when he gives you his last name, which is Father. He'll give it to you and you'll be Father. I am the Father, that I do know, and you'll be the Father of the same and only begotten Son of God. When you see him as I've seen him, and you will see him as I saw him, and you are his Father, then you and I are one. For I can't be the Father of your son and not be you. That's God's final revelation to man on this level. So in many and various ways, God spoke of old to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, he's spoken to us by a Son. And the Son reveals the name of the Father. For no man knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Matthew 11:27. Until that day comes, use that second revelation, which is forever his name, and use it wisely. As we are told in the 9th Psalm, the 10th verse, those who know thy name trust in thee. I am wealthy. I am healthy. I am in love and married. If they know that name, they'll trust in thee, for that's your very being. A name is the individual himself. So God's name is I am. And that is God. If you know the name, well, trust in him. So tonight, if you know the name, believe it. Trust in his name. You listen as though you heard what you would hear, were you now the man or woman that you want to be, and trust in his name. His name is I am. Well, who is hearing what you are hearing? Well, you are. And if I asked, you would say, I am hearing it. Well, that's God. What is God in you hearing? I am. And you name it. God in you is hearing, I am in love and married. I am healthy. What is God in you hearing? I am wealthy. Whatever your name, that's it. Now trust in his name, for those who know thy name trust in thee, for you will never forsake them. So here the name changes as man begins to awaken as God. And for the final revelation, I know of no greater chapter than John 17, where he reveals himself and gives himself to man. Holy Father, glorify thou me with thy own self. Verse 5. He doesn't want any other glory. It's God himself giving himself to man. For that's his purpose. God himself giving himself to man, for that is his purpose. When he succeeds in his purpose, the man to whom he's given himself is God. And God is Father, and that's the final revelation. Therefore, there must be a child. Where is the child if I am a father? Here comes the child in view, and he's David. God's only begotten son is David. Thou art my son, this day I have begotten thee. Psalm 2:7. That is concealed in man until that last moment when the veil is lifted and the fatherhood is revealed to man through the nature of the Son. And there you see David, and David tells you who you are. You are his father, and he calls you father. Calling me father, the 89th Psalm is then fulfilled. I have found David. He has cried unto me, thou art my father, my God, and the rock of my salvation. Psalm 89:26. So David calls you father. And there is no doubt, no uncertainty in your mind when you see him. There he is. Yet there is no change in your sense of I-ness. Neville made the statement he did not lose his identity as Neville in that moment. The self that becomes his father is the same self that was self before, only now a far greater self. It includes fatherhood, but the same sense of I-ness. You haven't changed your distinctive individuality, the same sense of I. But now it is enlarged to include fatherhood, and that father is God. You tell it to the world in the hope that you can make it as clear as it is to you, in the hope that you can. So, you know, whether they reject it or accept it, it is true. And the day must come in time when each individual will have the same experience. He'll pass through it all. We all get to experience this. The promise, the revelation, the revealing, every one of us. Until that happens, use his name wisely as revealed to us through his prophet Moses in the 3rd chapter of Exodus. Use it for wealth, for health, and for recognition. But don't blaspheme against the name of God. Unless you believe that I am he, you die in your sins. So we are told they took up stones to throw at him because he had offended. To them he had blasphemed the name of God, for he claimed, I am God. And so that was blasphemy on their level. And they took up stones to throw at him. What stones? They told him that they knew his father, they knew his earthly mother, they knew his brothers, they knew his sisters, and they named them. And so if I know your brothers and your sisters, and I know your father and your mother, Joseph and Mary, and they named the 4 brothers, they implied multiple sisters, and then they began to show him the facts of life, and the facts contradicted his claim. Therefore, they were stoning him with the facts of life. These were the stones. He simply disappeared out of their midst. You could not argue with that mind because they knew exactly your physical background. He is telling them, if you will receive what I tell you, I will give you power to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. John 1:13. This verse is something entirely different. In Greek physiology, to be born of blood, they meant that the seed of man mingled with the blood of the woman, and from this union came a child. But it wasn't born in that way. To be born of the will of the flesh is by sexual impulse. It wasn't born that way. To be born of man is to have human parentage. It wasn't born that way. It was born of God. Something entirely different, where a man suddenly awakes within himself and he steps out of his own skull to find that all along he has been sleeping. He hit snooze too many times. And then we read these words in the book of Revelation. And he thought himself alive, and he was dead. Revelation 1:18. Here a man was dead, and all along he believed he was alive. You read it. In the whole vast world, the sleep is so profound and so deep that he doesn't know that he is sleeping. And the sleep is so deep that he is likened spiritually to a dead man. Then one day, in God's own wonderful time, he awakens himself in man, and he brings him forth. Then he awakes for the first time to realize all through the ages that he had been dead, but he didn't know it. But now he's resurrected by the mercy of God. So he thought he was asleep while he thought he was awake, and yet he was dead, and yet he was dead. You read it, I think it's the 3rd chapter, the 1st verse of Revelation, those who were dead and yet thought themselves alive. But in the meanwhile, you think yourself alive. Well, try this principle by the use of God's name. He will not fail you. I promise you, he will not. But one thing to bear in mind is this. You may have wealth tonight and have it heavily insured, furniture, jewelry, and furs, but you left it when you came here tonight. Wherever you have this wealth, this outside wealth, you may have stocks and bonds, and they may be insured, but you left them wherever they are, maybe in a vault or your home. You know, standing here just about 2 years ago when I left this platform and looked over here, I saw this enormous flame and all these beautiful homes burning. They were all left behind where other people were, all consumed in a matter of moments. But there's one thing you can't leave behind, and you always take with you. After you find the name, you can't leave it behind you. Can you go any place where you leave behind you? I am. Where can you go in this world where you leave behind you the only power in the world, which is I am? The only power in the world. I am. For those who know thy name, put their trust in thee. Not in the bank, not in their social position, their financial position, their intellectual position, or any other position. Put your trust in thee. I am. Put your trust in thee. I am wealthy. I am healthy. I am in love. I am wise. Now, who are you? I am. So anyone who came in here tonight brought that name with them. When you leave here tonight, you're going to take it with you. And you can't go any place in the world where you can't leave it behind you. I'm sorry. You can't go any place in this world where you can leave it behind you. But maybe you don't know that you are carrying it with you. You can have a treasure and not know you have it. If I had $1 billion deposited in the bank, but I didn't know it, I could die of starvation for want of $1. Yet I could sign a check if I knew I had it and withdraw for my earthly needs. For here, you can't leave behind you God's name. He's put himself in you. Your very being, your own I amness. That's God. And because it is God, don't blaspheme against the name. Use it wisely. And use it lovingly. I say to you, what are you hearing? And then you tell me, I am, before you even answer. I am hearing so-and-so. Or, I am thinking so-and-so. Well, see to it that what you are hearing, what you are feeling, and what you are thinking is in harmony with your highest ideal. What is your objective? What is your desire? I am that. Who cares what the world looks like? It doesn't matter what the world's trying to tell you. The world's telling you lies because it's robbing you of the truth. The truth is your name is his name, and his name is all the power you need. It's all the power there is. See to it that what you are hearing, what you are feeling, and what you are thinking is in harmony with your highest ideal. Just go big. Go big, man. Just go big. It doesn't even, who's going to hold you back? Your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your kids, your cousins, neighbors. Who's going to hold you back from going big? I am that. No one. Because it's His name. It's all the power you need. It's all the power you have. You can't leave it behind wherever you go. You don't even have to insure it. For you can draw it out just like this man drew out his oil from this little bit of dirt. And today he's worth millions, but bored. But if you know the name and don't forget the name, you won't be bored. You'll be able to use it wisely through your entire earthly days. Which grade in school should we be teaching this? And then in this embodiment, the final one will be revealed to you. But only God knows when He reveals the final one. Only God knows when He reveals the final one. You don't take a number. You just continue to use the law wisely. Use His name wisely. I can talk about it and tell you about it, but I cannot lift the curtain for you. Only the Son Himself can reveal you as the Father. I can tell you that you're going to be the Father, that I do know, but I have no power to tear that curtain and show you David. He and He alone will reveal you as the Father. And so no one knows who the Son is save the Father. And no one knows who the Father is save the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal Him. But I will tell you, He will be David. One day He's going to tear that curtain from the vine and stand before you and call you Father. You know exactly who He is. And there'll be no doubt in your mind, but none whatsoever. You're looking at your own begotten Son. Begotten not by any woman in this world, but begotten out of your own wonderful being, your mind. And it's David, the eternal David. He will be just as He's described in the book of Samuel. Just as He's described, no doubt about it. I can tell the thrill that is in store for you after it happens. You are so excited that you can't think of anything. But you may bore your friends. You may bore anyone that you meet because you can't think of anything but this enormous event that's happened to you. You can't really think that it's taken place. You may be a single man, a man who has never known a woman in this world, but it makes no difference. All of a sudden, you are a father. And you are a father in the true sense of the word. Then you will know He was born not of blood, nor of the will of flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. He calls you Father. And you know God is the Father. He tells you exactly who you are. Then you've got to walk the earth for the remaining years shut out because you are still wearing the garment of flesh. And although you are now heir to a presence and to a promise that's already been fulfilled, you still cannot share it with others, so that it cannot become to you actual or fully realized in you until you take off the garment for the last time. Then you are one with the heavenly host. But everyone is destined. You can't brag about it. You can't crow about it because you didn't earn it. No one can brag about it for the simple reason you didn't earn it. It was all God's plan from the beginning. He who began a good work in you at that moment brought it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ is God the Father. Therefore, if Jesus Christ is God the Father, and David calls you Lord, and then David calls you Lord, who are you? Are you not then Jesus Christ? Then you realize the words, do you realize that Jesus Christ is in you? Unless you, of course, you fail to meet the test, 2 Corinthians 13:5. I hope you realize that we have not failed in our test. And so eventually you read the words and the whole thing disappears and there was Jesus only. Moses was present. Elijah was present. They all saw the glory of God. And when it all subsided, there was Jesus only. Matthew 17:2-8. For at the name of Jesus Christ, every knee will bend and every tongue will confess that he is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Philippians 2:11. There is only Jesus, and he has one son. He's sharing his son with you, not walking the street with you as a friend, but as your son. So he gives himself to every being in the world. And there's no way in the world that he can actually prove that he gave that gift of himself, save that he gave his only begotten son to you as your son. So the Bible in miniature is in the 16th verse of the 3rd chapter of John. And God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. It's in miniature in that one verse. And people think he gave his only begotten son and his name is called Jesus Christ. No. Jesus Christ, by his own confession, is God the Father. You see me, Philip, and yet you do not know me. He who has seen me has seen the Father. How then can you say, show me the Father? John 14:9. And so the Son given could not be that being who calls himself Father. And the Father is Jesus Christ. Who calls him Father? David. Then he asked the question nobody asked him when he said, I am the Father. Then where is the child? So he brings up the question, what do you think of Christ? And they said, well, the son of David. He said, why then did David in the Spirit call him Lord? If David calls him Lord, how can he be David's son? And no one asked any further questions. Matthew 22:41-45. David in the Spirit calls him Adonai, a word used by every child when it refers to his father. Every child spoke of his father as Adonai, translated in the English, my Lord. And so David called him my father. So he tells you who he is and who David is relative to himself. So David's going to call every being in this world my father. And because God is one and his name is one, and that name, every knee must bow to that name. Every knee must bow at that name, Not only you are destined to know yourself to be Christ Jesus or God the Father, but everyone. Oh man. So David's going to call every being in this world my Father. And because God is one and his name is one, and that name, every knee must bow at that name, not only you are destined to know yourself to be Christ Jesus or God the Father, but everyone. But until it is revealed in you, use this name as revealed through his prophet, Moses. When you go to them, just tell them, I am sent me unto you. Lead them out of that wilderness into light by thy name, by my name. Well, you can lead yourself today no matter where you are. Whether you are now bewildered because you are unwanted, as you think you are, or unemployed as you may be, lead yourself from these stories of violence into states of fruition, a fruitful state by the name. And the name is, I am. Just simply assume, I am. And name it and hear it, smell it, and see it to the best of your ability. To the degree that you remain loyal to this, what you are imagining and hearing, You will actually externalize it within your world. Now, don't judge it before you try it. Try it. Now, if what I've said this night offends, I'm not, blank space, to offend anybody should it be in conflict with what you believed when you came here. Yet I will go back to Scripture. He offended them, and then they sold him for 30 pieces of silver. Then we go back to the book of Leviticus, and here we're told, if an ox gores a slave, male or female, then the owner of the ox must pay to the owner of the slave 30 pieces of silver, and then the ox must be stoned. Exodus 21:32. The symbol of Christ is that of an ox. And so if the Christian gospel offends, well then, he is goring you by whatever he has to say. And now, having gored him, the slave will resent it. Then he must be sold for 30 pieces of silver. And so you always fulfill Scripture. The word will always be fulfilled. The word will always be fulfilled. The prototype of Jesus Christ was Joseph, and he was sold for 20 pieces of silver. 20 means disappointed expectancy. 30 is divine perfection. You reduce it to a 3, and a 3 is always associated, you reduce it to a 3, and 3 is also associated with resurrection. For on the third day, the earth rose up out of the deep, and so here, if I should offend you by what I say, then mentally sell me for my own, If I should offend you by what I say, then mentally sell me for my 30 pieces of silver. That's what you're called upon to do. For if the ox gores and in any way hurts the slave, male or female, then the owner must pay to the owner of the slave 30 pieces of silver, and then the ox must be stoned with the facts of life. People will always throw the bricks at and remind you of when they knew you, or even as they know you. For we are all limited as we wear these garments. I can tell you right now, after 2 months running with these videos, if you've noticed, I started my uploading December 19th. 2 months was Neville's birthday a day or two ago. I don't even know what today's date is. A couple days ago was 2 months. And I have been running. It's like I landed on the ground, ooh, and I am running at it pretty good. But to those around me, I am not the same person. I am not the same person. They can say they know me, but they do not know me. I know me. They can say where I live. They can say to whom I'm married. They can say to whom I'm related. I have a social circle. I have lots of brothers and sisters. They can all say they know who I am, but only I am knows who I am. His name is my name. People will always throw the bricks at and remind you of when they knew you, or even as they know you. For we are all limited as we wear these garments. Excuse me. No man in this world can tell me while he wears the garment that it isn't limited. Tonight, President Kennedy is frightfully limited in his office as president. This is February 22nd of 1963. We know what happens fatefully, I think 9 exact months. This is February 26th. Well, 9 months approximately later, we know what happens with the president then. Part of our looking back, or history as it's called. Tonight, President Kennedy is frightfully limited in his office as president. Bricks are coming all over the place. What he promised in his campaign to get the office and what he's delivered. And because of this conflict between what he promised and what he's delivered so far, well, they'll throw all the bricks in the world at him. He's fully aware of it. You can throw it at the Pope, throw it at the Queen of England, and throw it at any person in this world. The facts against any ambition of theirs. If I took you into my secret and told you my ambition, and you as a friend know I did not realize it, you could throw me all the rocks in the world and remind me of what I told you as against what I have accomplished. That is true of every being in the world. But nevertheless, whether you've accomplished them or not, go back and apply this principle toward the fulfillment of your dreams. I can tell you in my own case, for it has all been when I was faithful to the use of God's name. When I dared to assume that I am what at the moment reason denies and my senses deny, and I remained faithful to it, then I invariably realized that. The unnumbered times when I had not been faithful to it, I coasted. We all coast after a while, and then we're jacked up suddenly. We have to go back to the use of the name. And so to those who know thy name, put their trust in thee. Not in anything outside of thee. Nothing, not anything outside of thee. And your name is I am. And it's your name forever and forever. So put your trust in the name of God by walking out of here tonight in the belief that you are already the man or woman that you would like to be. See the world as you would see it, as though it were true. Just as though it were true. And to the degree that you remain loyal to this assumption, to that degree you will externalize it and reap it as a fruit within this world. Now let us go into the silence. Here we are. If you're not driving, close your peepers. I am wealthy. I am healthy. I am loving. I am wise. I am friend. I am free. That's his name. That's his name. Put your trust in thee.